Hoff, and I'm the just 2-year-old director of the Community Preservation Program, which is a new program in the city. And I'm here with two great interns who are in college, who are local residents from Boston, who are working with me from UMass and Bates in Maine. So I want to welcome, they're both named Liam, so it's really easy, Liam and Liam. So some of you, you may all know what the Community Preservation Act is, but just a quick rehash in case you don't. It's a state law that allows cities and towns across the Commonwealth to pass by ballot question a mechanism that charges property owners in Boston a 1% surcharge on their property tax. And for everyday homeowners, the North End may be a little higher, but the bulk of the money is coming from big commercial landlords and property owners. I own a little row house that I've been in for 25 years, and I pay about $60 a year. So, but it all adds up to a $25 million fund. And that fund by state law can support historic preservation, affordable housing, and parks and open space improvements. And the city hasn't had a new fund like this to do neighborhood improvements maybe in forever. And so, and they really we've organized it to be as community driven as possible. So it's an open, in some cities, the money just goes automatically to the Parks Department or the Housing Department or the Historical Commission. And here in Boston, we tried to set it up so that if you're a nonprofit, if you're a housing developer willing to invest much more in affordable housing, you can apply for CPA funds. And I can share a little bit about what, like I said, we're only 2 years old. We've done 2 rounds of funding. And in the North End, we funded 3 pretty significant projects for about $2.5 million to date. We funded the Knights of Columbus building that's being turned into affordable housing for elders, which we're all really excited about because it's just so hard in a neighborhood like yours to have new affordable housing and help elders stay in their neighborhood. We funded, just because you talked about Climate Ready Boston, we added funds to the Langone Park Pupilo Playground restoration that's going to actually elevate the park so that it will prevent the North End from flooding until at least 2050. I think we don't really know what's going to happen with sea level rise. The models show that this should work until 2050 and keep the neighborhood from flooding. So we're interested in sort of creative, unusual ways we can make change. I'll also tell you we did one historic preservation project. We are restoring the Cops Hill gravestones, which the historic cemeteries person was really excited to do. And there have been a couple North End projects we haven't funded, but I can add yet to it, because I think some of those projects will keep coming in. We haven't funded Old North Church, but Reverend Ayers, who I think has probably been to your meetings at times, is very interested in seeing the crypts more accessible, and historic preservationists are very interested in seeing the building supported. We're looking towards some of Boston's big anniversaries and trying to think through the historic preservation funding so that neighborhoods can both appreciate the history of Boston. In 2026 is going to be the 250th anniversary of the Revolution, which started here, as we all know. And in 2030, it's going to be the 400th anniversary of Boston. So how can we, and the mayor has said to me several times, how do we make sure that those anniversaries are meaningful for people who live here and in our neighborhoods, and not just for tourists? So we're really thinking about what are the sort of strategic investments to make. We're obviously worried about the housing crisis in Boston, and I think if any other affordable housing came up in the North End, we would fund it. And then just thinking about parks and open spaces, we're doing from little teeny pocket parks and making sure that they're pretty and there's benches that elders can sit on, or there's a playground that's not falling apart so kids in the neighborhood can play. You know, whatever the community comes to us with and about. So I'd love to I hope that's enough of an overview, but if we can, I talk fast, so I can get in a lot of information, but because I want to open it up. If you have any questions, or also what's really helpful about going to neighborhood groups is what's your pet project that you've always wanted to see improved in your neighborhood that you care about that might fit into one of these categories. If there's anything or any ideas. Because what we're trying to do is not just fund things, but find partnerships to make projects happen. So for instance, in Franklin Field is a housing project in Dorchester, and they've been, the elder buildings there have wanted a community garden that works for elders with raised beds and paths and a nice sitting area for a beautiful summer evening. And so we linked them with a pro bono landscape design group and with the Boston Housing Authority landscape person, and we've got this whole, another group that builds community gardens, and so they've all been meeting with the elders to plan a garden. And so wherever, we're working to take some ideas and find all the partnerships that you might need, and then you come in for funding. And we hopefully can build it and fund it. Yeah. So any questions or ideas?
I'll open it to council for questions.
Yeah. Oh my God, I've never not had at least one question. Come on. I'm teasing.
Well, it's historic funding, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, it's historic, housing, or parks.
All right, so since nobody has a question, let me ask you one.
Sure, great.
It seems to me, and I don't mean to be like a crybaby or a whiner, but it always seems like, this has been a neighborhood that, we've had all different backgrounds, heritages early on, but the ones that made the neighborhood what it is, obviously, are the Italian descendants. The best Little Italy in the country.
I know.
So, that's history. Paul Revere, historic, right?
Right.
Rose Kennedy and the St. Stephen's Church, that's historic, right? So immigrants coming here and living in terrible conditions and all kinds of deaths and flus and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, assimilating into society, becoming part of society, becoming great citizens. Why don't we have something that acknowledges that anywhere in this city? We have an Armenian memorial, like right there. God bless them, good for them. We don't have anything for Italians. So this is I have some commercial property, so probably what I pay in taxes alone can put that up. Do you know what I'm saying? Why don't we have a welcome to Little Italy, Boston's Little Italy? Why don't we have something that appreciates that part of the history of this neighborhood?
So
and you guys, is it possible to have a partnership or something?
Yes, absolutely. I think that how we would do that with the CPA funds, because we do have to follow the state law and have to keep, the funds have to go, they have to go to those three categories, but is there a park that is not just a tourist park, but really a place where residents gather, where we could have some kind of memorial like that? I know that one group is trying to do sort of a memorial area of a park, and they have granite blocks, and they're trying to carve history, notes about history for the neighborhood. Or famous quotations by some of the folks who settled the neighborhood. Is there some way that we could do something like that in a park here? Is there, so I'm making things up here, but that's what I want you to do, is to think about where do we put something like that. And maybe I'm a little bit biased, so shut me up, but I'm very mindful that you live here. You're not tourists. And there's plenty for tourists in the city, and I know that tourism helps drive things in the North End, but how can we make it for the people who have lived here for a long time and turned it into a really nice neighborhood? Are there historic buildings that are not just the Old North Church, but could be significant, that could have, that need some restoration and could have a nice plaque on the front that really describes how the building was built and owned and celebrated Italian culture, and it's where people still gather, or weddings still happen, or something like that. Like what are the places? Like, this is a place-making fund to both acknowledge and recognize what the people who live there and have been there before and its history. But what that would be, I'd love to work with the group here. I would get Maria to help. And if we could think about, and it might be that we even just start with some summer evening or Saturday morning, we walk the neighborhood with a small committee or group of you here to figure out how we do it and where we do
You
it.
can have a workshop where you invite some, original North Enders and come up with like a brainstorming session or something like that
Right.
about what should it be, what should we include, not include, and maybe start from there.
I'd love to do that. And we're trying to do that as much as we can. Just get out, present it at as many neighborhood associations as we can. We've done forums where I bring, a big whiteboard and we write down all these ideas. We figure out which ones are the most feasible and people are the most interested in, and then we follow up and figure out what are the partnerships we need. Like it turned out the Knights of Columbus is being developed by East Boston CDC. They're not from the neighborhood, but they're really excited to do this because they care a lot about elder housing. And so it doesn't even have to be necessarily a North End construction company, but it might be that we also engage to help make this happen, or a historic preservation group or something like that. Yeah. The other thing that we're trying to do, and I was shocked when I learned that the North End is not a landmark district. And that, to be a landmark district might be a way to acknowledge the history a little bit more. And we're trying to CPA has some administrative funds that we're trying to use to update historic surveys of the neighborhoods. And many neighborhoods have been seeking that, and it would provide the information to make the neighborhood a National Historic District if you wanted that, or to at least identify all the buildings that are significant and have certain history. A survey like that finds out how old every building is, what happened in them, because an historic building might not just be something that was built in 1800, but it could be where the first Italian family lived, or Rose Kennedy came to church, or something along those lines. And so we're hoping, the North End has just been really, in my mind, recognizing that you don't have updated historic surveys and you're not a landmark district, and that's kind of shocking, given it's, as you said, it's one of the oldest neighborhoods in Boston, and it's celebrated as such. Yeah. So I'd love to do a workshop like that. Maybe this fall when people are all coming back together, and I'd love to be invited back to help do that. And you talk to Maria probably more than you talk to me. I have like one business card left, but I could leave it with whoever wants to stay in touch. I've given them all out, and I need more. But it's, and we're all over the website too. It's boston.gov/CPA for Community Preservation Act.
Yeah, I have a question. Are churches eligible? That is, other than the crypt at Old North.
Right.
But two of them that I have in mind.
Yeah.
One is Sacred Heart Church, the other is St. Stephen's Church. Both
Right.
of them need construction maintenance.
Right. I know St. Stephen's better than Sacred Heart, but yeah.
And is there anything that prohibits your
So it's a
distributing to
really,
churches?
really important question that I find fascinating, but I wish it wasn't, the scenario wasn't happening. So we absolutely want to fund churches. Churches are, Boston's history is in its churches, so often, and they're often the most beautiful, sort of prominent buildings in our streetscape and our neighborhood character. We are being heavily challenged by the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, a very ideological group in Washington, and we're pretty sure they're going to sue us for funding churches, but we're not going to stop, because we want to take it all the way to the Supreme Court and we want to win. So we funded about 12 churches so far, all over the city. One in the First Church in Hyde Park, a Back Bay. We're doing a Back Bay Tower that's crumbling. That's one of the most significant parts of the Back Bay skyline. We're trying to play it in such a way that we can win this court case and that we can abide by current laws that do ask you to do some separation of church and state. So we're doing exterior work and structural work and work that does not contain religious imagery. So, so we're not doing, excuse me, stained glass windows of the Last Supper. We're doing geometric stained glass windows potentially, and a lot of masonry and doors and roofs and that kind of, you know, because that's vital to keeping the building intact. And we feel like it's a way to support public use, because everybody who walks down the street wants to see a beautiful building. They don't want to see the brickwork crumbling or the door warped or something like that. So we're trying to stick with the more exterior structural kind of work. And we think that that'll help us with this church and state issue. But we just, you know, if it was any other city, but Boston's history is in its churches so often that we feel like we can't ignore those buildings. Yeah, so that's where we are. And I'll often come out and, I mean, come out, it's not very far, I just walked here from my office, but we'll come and walk a building with you and figure out what is needed and what would fit best for CPA funds. And we have a 9-person committee. 5 of those people come from the city's boards and commissions, and 4 of them are selected by the city council. And that 9-person committee makes recommendations for what should be funded. So we present everybody's applications to them, and it really helps if I've seen the site. Liam and Liam are doing a lot of site visits and taking pictures and showing really degraded conditions. They were at Dorchester Heights in South Boston this afternoon, where the stairs are just crumbling. We can fund federal properties, state properties, and city properties, as well as private properties. It's very flexible that way. So if there's a park, if there's a playground that's really needing to be renovated and it's not in the park's capital plan for the next 5 years, we can jump in and often fix the playground. We know the federal government is not funding the National Park Service right now. So, and a lot of the stairs in Dorchester Heights, every neighbor I've talked to in South Boston has complained about the access to that park and that monument, because the stairs are, I mean, the pictures are graphically disastrous. Yeah. Yeah?
How do you go about making requests?
So what you would do is call me or email me and tell me what the project is and what's needed. It might be St. Stephen's roof. And then if you can get a group together connected to that building, if it might be the priest from St. Stephen's or the building committee, and then I would set up a time to come look at the building with you, hear if there's any plan, if you contacted a contractor yet, what the committee is looking for in historic properties, and if you don't have like an historic preservation architect involved, I've got a whole list of them now, and I'll connect you to one. And they'll help assess what's needed, because it might not just be the roof, it might be the molding, or the beautiful ceramic, you know, stonework around it. And so we'll work to figure out the resources that you need to implement a project like that, and we'll figure out who should be the applicant. Like it may, like there have been a lot of projects. There was a park or two vacant lots that were for sale, and in a neighborhood that did not have a park or any kind of green space that was accessible, especially for families with little children. And so we helped them purchase that land, but we found a local developer who was willing to be, because it was just a loose group of neighbors who got together and went and knocked on everybody's door and got everybody to sign a petition. We need a park in this neighborhood, we want a playground, this is how many children we have. Very grassroots. And we found the local developer, and then we got the Parks Department involved, because they're trying to increase the, to make sure that people don't have a long way to walk or have access. And then we got a group called the Trust for Public Land, and they're bringing fun equipment to activate the space this summer and get everybody excited and used to going there. And in the meantime, we bought the property, and the developer is transferring it to the Parks Department, and they're hiring a designer and a construction team to build the park. And it may not be a park for 3 or 4 years, because it takes time, but I keep saying, you know, we just have to look to the future here. You know, just like planting a small tree, it might not be shade for 10 years, but it will be eventually, and it will mean neighborhood improvements. Yeah. So that's a long answer to but I hope, yeah, we'll work with you. That's really the bottom line. That's the goal, is to really work with neighborhood groups and make sure that the improvements you want to see in your neighborhoods are happening. And we're also really working hard to make sure that every neighborhood gets investments. In West Roxbury, would you like to stop?
No, yeah, we were just gonna, yeah.
Okay, we just want to make sure, like if the North End didn't have a project, for one funding round, I would be here more. You know, I just want to make sure that no neighborhood is overlooked. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great,
Appreciate
sure,
it.
and do invite us back, we're happy.
I was gonna say, well, maybe even we can post something on Facebook, try to get like a poll out of trying to get locations that people are interested in, using CPA grants.
Oh, that'd be cool to
for
see a list
projects.
of what you're on. And then the workship idea is a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, I hadn't really quite thought about doing it. Yeah, so I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, and we'll
Great.
definitely be in touch about it.
Thank you.